I flew to Zanzibar and continued volunteering there. And that was also through Workaway. And it was a single mother who was starting a business. And she lived 50 feet from the beach. It was a gorgeous place. I was there for a month and I helped her set up her business, everything from labeling. And she was creating coconut oil products, which is manufactured there by women that collect the coconuts and smash up the coconut and make oil. And all scrubs and different things like that sell to tourists that would be there. She had a 5-year-old son.
What was the living arrangement like?
She had a 2-bedroom little apartment, and I had 1 bedroom, and she and her son were in the other bedroom. And we would take turns cleaning, cooking. There's a little family, and I was probably her 5th or 6th volunteer she had to work away. The 5-year-old, I would help in the morning cook for him. It was everything to help her. Again, the whole basis is free room and board and whatever they need. And as long as it's mutually agreeable. But I helped her with him. And then he would go to school. We would go into the main town, which was an hour away to get labels, to get a logo done. It was everything about setting up her business. And she also had a second business, which was a cooking class. I also went with her to a couple of those that there were local tourists. She networked around, and a lot of people go to the side of the island, Zanzibar, for windsurfing, kite surfing lessons. That's not to just do it, but they came from Holland and France, mostly Holland. The teachers were there, and they have schools all along the beaches, and they come for this season. So they have big tourist groups that would come through. So she had networked with these schools and was teaching people how to cook Tanzania. She was from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, but to cook with the local food. And so she did cooking classes. So she was very entrepreneurial. It was just helping her get started for these beauty products. She had networked with them. I went with her. We went to different places to talk to hotels to sell her products. So we all lived together in this little 2-bedroom, ate together. It was a modern enough little apartment. And then you walk out and you just turn a corner and there's the beautiful ocean. And so we would take walks and we would go to restaurants every now and then.
What was the town?
It was called Jambiani, but that was where I was. But it's a beautiful place to go.
Yeah, the woman you were staying with, how old was she?
She was 42 at the time. She was university educated. She had worked for NGOs in Dar es Salaam, which is where she was raised. A very smart woman, but she decided she wanted to raise her son on Zanzibar, and it's a 2-hour ferry ride from the coast, or you fly over in 30 minutes. And so she had moved to Zanzibar to start. She had this dream to do more with tourism. It was her hope to do tours, to do the cooking classes. She was a mover and a shaker, very networker, very gregarious, beautiful woman, and just would say, "Hey, what do you think about this? And what if I start this?" And she had lots of irons in the fire. So also with my time with her was to talk about marketing plans and to talk about budgets and to talk about focus and which things could be passive income as far as if these products were created and she got them placed, that then they could be manufactured there. She would buy it wholesale, label it, and then sell it, of course, as the middleman to these different places. And as I was leaving, we were hearing from people saying, we're having cancellations. There's this virus. As I left, that all shut down because there was no tourism. Just got support from the little boy's father to some extent, but everybody was just trying to exist. Hotels were shutting down just like the rest of the world. So, but she hung in there. So her business is still going, or she started it back up again. But yeah, it was very dire for so many people in the world. But the good news is they have agriculture there. There's egg producing. In fact, there was NGOs there that were helping ladies start businesses with eggs. And I think the communities all pulled together, and so they helped each other, and so they were able to keep going. But
What did she teach in her cooking classes?
Again, the ugali standard would be the ugali. I'm trying to remember the name. They had a seafood product there. It was a mollusk. It was like, we would say it would be a clam or an oyster or whatever, but it was a separate type. And as you would drive from the main town, the local ladies would have these woven baskets and they would be yelling. And so you pull over and they've shelled them and they would just be in a pile and you would buy them by the kilo or half a kilo. And she cooked them with this sauce. And it was every time we came through, I was like, please, can we buy more? They were cheap. And you would think we should be dying because they're sitting on these woven baskets and have not been refrigerated. But they would be there in the afternoon. And so we'd drive by, we would get them and she would cook them. And it was just amazing. She would cook like they use ground peanuts. They're ground to a powder. They use this in Uganda, Tanzania, some in northern South Africa. And they mix it with spinach or they mix it with sweet potato. And it creates this protein enriched vegetable that is so good. Rice, goat stew, different local fare that she would teach you and then you eat, but she cooked really good. And the different seasonings. One thing was a Swahili salad. It was just cut up tomatoes and onions with lime juice, but it was so good. And I've written them all down. But the seafood, I don't know where you would ever get it anywhere else. It seemed to be just there that I've heard of it.
Did she go to people's homes and do the classes, or did they come to her home?
She had both in the past, but the two that I went to, there was a school there and students they could stay in the school or stay in local areas that they were doing. It's big money for this kite surfing. This is a very expensive sport. The boards, to rent them and the equipment, it's very expensive. And these people have been paying a lot. And so the school had facilitated two of the classes that I had gone with her to. So they used where they lived to, where all the teachers did. They had a really big kitchen and a big dining room. And so they invited their students and the students paid, and she brought all the food. And so they paid per person. But she had also in the past had gone to another guest house or two to do this. And she is looking to move to a place that had a big kitchen. So she was going to start having it at her school where she lived. But that all went astray because of COVID. But we had gone looking and actually she had rented the place before I left. And then after I left, it was canceled because there was just no point in moving to a bigger place. The famous town in Zanzibar is Stone Town. Zanzibar is a gorgeous island and so many tourists would be there. But Stone Town there's a lot of snorkeling, scuba diving. There's a museum for Freddie Mercury because he was born and lived in Stone Town, Zanzibar till he was 8. There's lots of history because Zanzibar was a slave trading area. It was where the big slave markets were. So the people were kidnapped and taken from all areas of Africa. And it was one of the main places that the ships would come in. There's a huge slave market museum there of how they were sold there in Stone Town, which is sad history, but fascinating as well. And actually the Ottoman of Oman, there was a sheikh that was the first ruler of Zanzibar. So it's very Muslim background. So you can be in bathing suits on the beach because it's so tourism. But as soon as you go inland, it becomes very wrong. But it's a multiple of cultures right there. So you have all girls in bikinis on the beach, and then you come inland and then you see women completely wrapped up at locals. So mosques are around. So it's a fascinating place of the culture there and a beautiful place. I was there when I was planning to go back to South Africa. The plan had been to be there for 10 days. And all of a sudden we started hearing about this virus that was taking place. And right when I was there, the countries around the world were shutting down. So there were tourists that I met in this little lodge or guest house I was staying at that were saying, we don't know if we can get back to Spain. And another couple with their child were saying, we don't know if we can get back to Slovakia because everything was shutting down. And I got on my flight to South Africa and within days, everything shut down. The world shut down. And that was the beginning of the COVID lockdown.